All right, bonus Locked On Senators. I'm Ross Levitan. That's Brandon Pillar. We have the legend at Sens Prospects with us as well, answering your questions on what the best and worst of the prospect pool is. Why don't we start with the best? Why not? Who's a prospect? This one's from Shannon Ball 93 on YouTube. Who's a prospect that you were low on that ended up being better than expected? And conversely, a prospect that maybe you were too high on that didn't pan out.
For sure. This is a guy, a bittersweet one. I'll lead off. Someone who I didn't have a lot of faith in when the pick happened, even during his first year or two as a Sens prospect, but now will have a solid pro career. I'm certain of it, potentially as an NHL backup, is Kevin Mandolese. He was like unimpressive in his first couple years in the org, and I thought like, okay, he is going to go the way of Jordan Hollett and a couple other goalie picks where like there's no follow up here. And then it was his last season in the queue, which unfortunately got derailed by COVID. He was like first team all-star. I think he was Canadian Hockey League goalie of the year or nominee. That team was primed to win that league, make a Memorial Cup run. He really took an incredible step that I didn't see coming. And that's an example, I think, of like sort of the voodoo that is goalie prospects and difficult to evaluate, but someone that I really didn't have a whole lot of hope for a couple years into the pick. And then he really turned a corner, and now I won't be surprised if he's playing games with the Avalanche next year.
Yeah, we're hoping for the best for Mando for sure. Another one here from Patrick McConnell 3776. Are you concerned about our prospect pool moving forward, given we're entering a competitive window with one of the lesser prospect pools in the league?
Not really. I think there's a natural yin and yang when it's like, as your team is doing better, your prospect pool is probably less good. If I think of my glory days of like when Sens prospects was most interesting, it was like the Sens were the worst team in the league, but we were looking at Shabbat and White, and then we were looking at Batherson, Norris, Brown, all these guys like ripping it up in junior in the American League, right? So I'd say just unfortunately, right, like the Sens traded away a first round pick or two and a couple second round picks that maybe they shouldn't have in the past couple of years, and that's made things a little bit more thin than I would ideally like to see. But it's, you don't have to rely on your prospect pool to plug some holes potentially. That's the reason why you have some of these AHL vets, guys like you can bring in like Matthew Highmore showed that he could like step in and be an effective occasional NHL player last year, right? It's not a prospect, but sort of he's the guy that's maybe being an injury fill-in, right? So yeah, my take is, I would ideally like it to be a bit stronger, yes, but not too concerned, because what I'm hoping is the Sens are now entering their competitive, era of unparalleled success that we were promised. It's okay if the prospect pool is, lower in the rankings.
Okay. And you also have to remember that some of the Sens top players are all under 25 years old still. So they just graduate them a little bit younger when it comes to especially the top end guys, Stützle, Sanderson, Greg, all 22, or in Greg's case, they'll be 22 in a couple weeks. That said, when it comes to JL Sens, he's got two here. We'll go with the first one. Which player from the past few drafts is developing better than expected? So I know you said Mando for all time. So let's do with someone who's still in the organization today.
A couple guys we talked about, Hoyt Stanley and Theo Wahlberg, for sure. I think, again, if you look back to already, Hoyt Stanley probably goes earlier than the fourth round just based on what he was able to do at Cornell last year. Stepping into a top four, often top two role on a team. They won the ECAC. They made it to the Frozen Four, right? That right shot D, like this is exciting. This is an exciting player. And Wahlberg, again, anyone in the sixth or seventh round, if they become anything of interest, I think that's a win. So yeah, those are two guys that I'm high on.
So we'll do the second question from JL Sens now. Any prediction for who you think will be the most improved player during this coming year? And he thanks you for your time
and service.
Thank you so much for the questions. Interesting one. So I'm not going to answer with those same two guys, although they definitely come to mind. I would say, let's look at Oscar Pettersson, right? Nice. It's a bit of a bumpy season last year, even though, I think it was the right decision. So let's see him actually take that next step this year.
Okay, and then we'll go with Dylan Ferguson. We talked about Carter Yakemchuk in our full episode, but Dylan's already thinking ahead. When Yakemchuk makes the NHL. Who's the ideal partner for him? Is it Thomas Chabot or Jake Sanderson? Now, I will put the caveat that you think back to Thomas Chabot in particular comes to mind, but when you have these hot shot top 10, top 15 prospects, sometimes on day one of camp, you'll throw them with the top 4 guy just because you know he's only there for a week. Let's see what he can do. So if Travis Green were to do that for one day this training camp, so I don't want you to project how Chabot's going to be 3-4 years down the line. If one day at training camp this year, you're going to put Yakemchuk with a top 4 guy, is it Chabot or is it Sanderson?
Something we've talked about, that this new regime in the organization is preaching, its balance. And I think Yakemchuk is the perfect balance for Jake Sanderson. Whereas Yakemchuk weak, it's his skating. He identifies himself a 7 out of 10. Jake Sanderson, one of the best skaters in the league. Yeah. Jake Sanderson, not an overly physical guy. Yakemchuk racking up over 100 penalty minutes. You know what I mean? I just see those two as like a perfect pairing. I also think Chabot really needs to work with a more defensive-minded defenseman, and he can be the ozone guy, right? So multiple reasons. I love this question. I really think it's Jake Sanderson.
Yeah, and the transition game, if Sanderson and Yakemchuk were paired together, would be so interesting because you'd get Sanderson would start with it in his own end. Quick outlet pass to Yakemchuk. He just dangles through everyone and gets a shot on net. Brady Tkachuk's right there on net, scoops up the rebound and scores. Put it on repeat. Let's go.
I can hear Dean Brown saying shoots, fires, scores on the rebound. Brady Tkachuk. Henry, final question. This one comes from Ross Levitan. Says, big fan. What's your favorite league to cover when you're searching up Sens prospects globally?
Good question. I will say we talked about the USHL a little bit. That's my least favorite. That league has got to level up its media game. It's often like I'm watching like a beer league level stream of these games. I can't see the players' names, right? That sort of thing, right? So, yeah. But so what's my favorite? I loved when there was a lot of players at UND. It was just like that conference within the NCAA had a great. So it's like that's a niche answer. It's a version of the NCAA, but
Alex Heinert himself,
right?
Yeah, the crew is so good there.
Midco Sports or whatever it is, like that's pro level quality.
Yeah, really is. Awesome, Henry. So we're looking forward to a full episode with Henry. Make sure you check it out wherever you get podcasts. We're also available on YouTube. That's at Sens Prospects. For Brandon Pillar, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been a bonus Locked On Senators, your team every day.